Christian here, and on May 24th, in a complete reverse of plans, I went to the Battleship Cove in Fall River, Massachusetts. Originally, as Ben stated, about 2 days before my next trip to the Midwest back in May, I was initially going to be going out to the Midwest, but the area I was going to go to was mostly flooded, and there was no guarantee that the whole area wouldn't get completely flooded out. With the severe thunderstorms and everything, I decided to, I think this is the closest last minute change I've ever had to make, because I literally made the change within 24 hours before hitting the road. I decided to change directions completely and go to New England and the East Coast. Before entering the ships at Battleship Cove, there is a little shed that you have to enter, and there they actually have 2 PT boats, which names escape me, and they also have a variety of different torpedoes, bombs, helicopters, and then you're there. It has a South Dakota class fast battleship, the USS Massachusetts BB-59. It has a Bellow class submarine, the USS Lionfish SS-298, and it has a Gearing class destroyer, the USS Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. DD-850. Main reason I wanted to go, obviously, was for the battleship. I have never seen a battleship before in my life. Now, while action set go, rail fanning and other cool stuff has always been geared towards rail fanning per se, I've always enjoyed myself going to museums, especially ones that have naval ships or that have ships, because actually, believe it or not, I do appreciate a lot of ocean liners, and there's a lot that I wish didn't get scrapped. But anyhow, the USS Massachusetts being the biggest attraction, I decided to start my New England trip out in Massachusetts. The USS Joseph Kennedy, while not the same class as the destroyer, the USS Sullivan, as I have been on many times in my life, did kind of remind me of it. It was small. It was, that and the USS Lionfish were probably the most unmodified when it came down to the most amount of exhibits in there. I'll go over that when we get to the USS Massachusetts. This was also in the spring of 2000 used in the movie 13 Days. While the ship was laid down in 1945. It was not commissioned until December of that year, meaning it was not in World War II like the USS Lionfish or the USS Massachusetts. USS Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. actually arrived in the Battleship Cove in 1973.
Magnetic compass just forward of the binnacle, which is the steering station of the ship. And then at the steering station, of course, around the binnacle, the rudder angle indicator to show the amount of helm on. The gyrotic compass to be shifted to shift to heating tubes in lieu of lack of any electronic communications for conservation of fuel.
And like the USS Sullivan, you could actually see the engine room and the fire room of the USS Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. They actually have 4 ships. I named the first 3, but the other one that they have, they got on June 14th, 1997, and that is the Hindenburg, which was originally commissioned by the East German Navy. This ship is not open to the public, and I don't know if this ship ever will be open to the public because it's been there for 20 years. It was decommissioned in April of 1991. The USS Lionfish was a World War II submarine laid down in 1942, and it was launched in 1943, and it saw service from 1944 when it was commissioned, and it was decommissioned in 1953 and was struck from the Naval Registry on December 20th of 1971. It has been at the Battleship Cove ever since. This was the first Battle-class submarine, I believe I'm pronouncing it right. The 2 World War II submarines I've been in that were American were Gatto-class submarines. Battle-class submarine was an improvement over the Gatto-class submarine and was larger. Going through it though, it felt a little more cramped because it had more protective glass over everything. Whereas in the USS Cod, everything's original and you can actually walk around the ship and you do still get a sense of how tight it was. The USS Croker has a lot of protective glass as well. I would take one step further and say the USS Lionfish has more protective glass. Even the command center is cramped, whereas in the USS Croker and the USS Cod, I both thought had a little bit more breathing room. One of the things that I find the most interesting about these warships, other than seeing the munition and the deck guns on them, well, not really on a submarine, is just how the engine rooms are. On the destroyer, it doesn't seem as cramped, but in the submarine, it just amazes me with how small it is, how tight of a space it is, yet those engines power the entire ship. The main reason I went was to see the USS Massachusetts, a South Dakota class battleship. I thought it had an interesting history. After the war, the United States pretty much moved away from battleships and they started going with destroyers and the aircraft carriers because the destroyers were smaller and were more versatile, and the aircraft carrier, where there was a lot of battles in World War II, such as the Battle of Midway, the Battle of Coral Sea, you could launch planes and bomb the enemy ship from miles away without getting close up on them with a giant battleship, where you pretty much your enemy has time to prepare to attack you. Not saying with airplanes that it eliminated that they didn't know they were coming, but with airplanes it was a little more versatile to get in, get out. It was after the USS Massachusetts was decommissioned and the ship was going to be scrapped. A group of former crew members did not want to see the ship scrapped. They wanted to see the ship somehow saved. So a group of them got together and were able to raise enough money to buy the ship from the Navy. And in 1965, she was brought to Fall River, Massachusetts. However, though, the guns on the deck were massive, and this by far has to be the largest ship I have seen. This is to be the largest museum ship I have ever been in. It was amazing just how big it was. And kind of like the USS Little Rock, a few of the areas in the aft were dedicated to memorials, which I am not at all knocking because I do like going through and see them. Whereas the USS Little Rock, I would say about 60% memorials. Here, that statistic was a little lower, and it was still a lot in its original form. You got to see where the crew members are. And one thing that amazed me was just how massive the ship was and how massive those deck guns were. I could only imagine just how quick the crew had to move with so many crew members on there when battle stations were called. And also, too, you kind of got the sense that it was a little cramped on a battleship because of just how big it was and just how many crew members were able to fit on the ship. Now, the flying bridge obviously was not open to the public. Well, the USS Joseph P. Kennedy, you could get up to the bridge, but again, it was sealed off. You could see it from the walkway and you could look into the glass. One of the bridges of the USS Massachusetts was open. They also had displays about the ice cream shop downstairs. In the USS Massachusetts, you could also get into the fire room and the engine room. And again, I could only imagine just how hot it was down there in the fire room. Anyhow, that's it for my overdubs. I hope you did enjoy the video. And next up is the USS Nautilus. And for all of my railfan followers, stay tuned. The Essex Valley Railroad chase will be up in 2 weeks.
A system for dispersal.
The message that had been decoded onto the
vacuum, of course, it gives you the atmospheric pressure. So the sea level is 7/10 inches of vacuum, or pressure at sea level, and you go down into the vacuum, and the more vacuum you can make, the more power you have, the more efficiency you have on the turbine. And whatever RPMs that you want, you can read up on the pronunciate up here, and you maintain your RPMs. If in the event that you have to back down, reach the stern, then the person will open the bypass valve for the 600-pound line to the
control of the entire ship, as well as the maintenance of the ship. Station throughout, responsible for the ship to be at a level keel at all times, and when necessary, inside the valves or the tanks, either with fuel or water, might not feel
I was up one day and
didn't want the ship I was decided to be trying. And a lot of